Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Conte. Thank you, everyone, for being here this Sunday, the 30th of October, 2022. We're back here again. Doctor, today we want to uh, look at what I call indiscipline in the National Assembly. Um, we also would like to look at the impact of these on the general discourse in the Gambia um, with regards to um, free speech in the country. After that, we will also look briefly at the new twist in the Sainabou Mbaye case, um, which direction that legal case is heading to now. And finally, we will look at the economy of the Gambia from the viewpoint of the recent poverty report on the country. So those are the things we want to look at today. Um, I hope we are joined at some point by Mr. Colley and Mr. Kuram. But that's what we have today, Dr. Conte. First off, I want to start with what I call indiscipline in the National Assembly. Dr. Conte, what we see recently in the National Assembly is that the National Assembly is becoming very, very contentious. Many of the members are in a headlong collision with the Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Gata. Previously, we saw it with the APRC member. I believe after that, we also saw a conflict between the Speaker and a UDP member. And recently, 2 days ago, we saw another one between the Speaker and the PPP Banjul South member, Tumanjai. So we have a number of incidents in the National Assembly where members have been kicked out for indiscipline, breaching the standing orders of the National Assembly. The most recent one is what we are going to be a little bit focused on, and that is the case of Tumanjai, Banjul South National Assembly member, who belongs to the PPP party. Tumanjai made a statement which is a direct insult to another member of the National Assembly, also the Deputy Speaker, Mr. Sidinjai. And the Speaker admonished him for making such a statement, which is a breach of the National Assembly rules, standing orders. And Tumanjai was given an opportunity to withdraw that statement, rephrase it, or leave the National Assembly premises. And she doubled down on it. She refused to withdraw it. And the Speaker eventually had her marched out of had her expelled from the National Assembly. So the country is quite divided on this. Many are on the side of Tumanjai, and others are on the side of the Speaker. I think what one can say on this, Dr. Conte, is that the National Assembly requires some amount of decorum, some amount of order, right? It's a rule-based institution, right? Some amount of good behavior is expected of members. So Tumanjai, in my view, should have withdrawn that statement and rephrase it in a way that is polite to fellow members. One might make a free speech argument, but the National Assembly has its own rules. There is a certain minimum expectation of National Assembly members. So a blanket free speech may not apply in the National Assembly. And one thing I like to say, Sidinjai about for is that Dr. Conte is that he is able to articulate his argument in a language that is quite strong, but quite polite. If I may use that word, the ability to articulate one's point, no matter how critical it might be, in a strong but acceptable language, is a quality that National Assembly members need to learn, to be able to do. You can differ, you can disagree with the convention, you can disagree with what the majority of the people think. You can have a very different, very radical point of view, but if you are able to articulate this in a language that is quite acceptable, even if not quite convincing, and respectful of your fellow members, that is quite a skill. One thing I appreciate Shirindai for is the ability to do that. If you listen to his argument, for many Gambians, it is a flimsy argument. They would not buy into that the Ministry of Health did a great job by mitigating or minimizing the deaths or the damage caused by the AKI, acute kidney injury, that happened in the country. Many Gambians would not buy it. But Sidinjai made his argument in a clear, acceptable, respectful language, right? So I think Tuma, instead of going into insults and stuff like this, he should be able to counter Sidinjai's claims in a clear, articulate, acceptable language, that Gambian people can appreciate and understand and be convinced that Sidinjai is wrong and that Tumajai's point of view is the truth, is the more acceptable one. I think she needs to embrace that kind of argument because at the end of the day, that's what will convince people, right? Not insults. Insults are clearly a hallmark of somebody who doesn't have a point or who cannot articulate his or her points, right? So that is what I feel about this National Assembly crisis that happened when Tumajai was kicked out of the National Assembly. And in my view also, this touched on a bigger issue of free speech in the country. We've seen instances where people were arrested for the simple reason that they have made remarks about the president or the first lady or politicians, senior politicians. And so they got arrested and thrown in jail. We know about the case of Mohamed Dabo, the comedian, who was detained for like almost 4 days in a police cell in very horrible conditions. And he came out totally broken, and he had to apologize.
No, I sent it to your messenger.
And actually made a comedy out of it by calling auntie and Babs with all kind of praises.
Okay, well, go to my page.
So, and then we saw the case of Sabali also, who is actually going to face a trial, a civil suit for defamation by the businessman, Mr. Jawad. So, and there is another case going on where a lady that claimed to have attacked Mandinkas, and previously there was a claim actually attacked Sarakulas. And the issue of the Lawyer Dabo case, somebody who attacked Lawyer Dabo, and UDP, 2%ers are up in arms. So these are all issues of free speech question. And I did post a poll, Dr. Conte, that questioned people whether insulting the president or politicians is or should be considered a crime. I don't know what's the law in the Gambia, but my personal view, and in the United States, insulting the president and insulting politicians is not a crime. Now, you can make a moral argument out of that it is immoral to insult anybody, which probably is true, but the law, we are not legislating morality, right? The law is not the same as morality, right? In the US, and I think what should be the law is that insulting the president and insulting politicians should not be considered a crime. It is not moral, but it cannot be considered a crime. It should be protected by free speech, right? And even in the US, there are presidents in the past who tried to make insulting the president illegal, make it a crime, but it never worked. It did not work. Every time they tried to do it, it backfired. It didn't work, right? Now, insulting in this case, what I'm saying is not the same as using fighting words, right? Or what they call here as disorderly conduct, right? It's not the same as that. If you use words that constitute disorderly conduct or fighting words, that is illegal, and you could be arrested for that. But simply insulting a politician or the president or his spouse, the first lady, cannot be considered criminal, in my view, right? So this is a debate in the Gambia. Is that Mr. Colley?
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome on, Mr. Colley.
Thank you.
So to just give you a recap of what we were talking about is we're talking about the indiscipline in the National Assembly and possibly in the whole country. We saw the Speaker expelled Tuma Mbaye this past Friday from the Assembly for apparently insulting Sidin Jai. And before that, we saw a UDP NAM and also before that, a APRC NAM, who were both in conflict with the Speaker because of indiscipline. And we are saying that, National Assembly members should try to comply with the standing orders of the Assembly. We expect a certain minimum of good behavior from them, that they should be able to argue their cases, articulate their cases in a strong, clear language that doesn't necessarily have to constitute insults, right? So they should be able to articulate themselves, like Sidin Jai did, as controversial as Sidin Jai is, and as his explanation, his excuse for the Ministry of Health is very flimsy. But he was able to argue his case in a clear, articulate, acceptable language that is respectful of everybody, right? We may not agree with him. So I think Tuma Mbaye needs to learn to articulate his arguments in a language that is friendly, that is acceptable in the National Assembly, not resort to insults. Insults are simply the hallmark of somebody who doesn't know how to articulate him or herself in a clear, convincing, and respectful language, right? So that's what we are talking about, and also how that impacts the issue of free speech in the country. We saw that Mohamed Dabo was arrested for apparently insulting the First Lady. And there were cases, Mohamed Sabali is facing a civil lawsuit for making statements about Jawara, businessman Jawara, that are unacceptable to him, and he considered it as defamation. We saw there were arrests or maybe false arrest of the lady who is claimed to have insulted shareholders and alleged that Unda Nyang of NPP asked him to do it. And recently we saw an attack on somebody who is claimed to have insulted UDP leader, Lawyer Dabo. So these issues are festering in the Gambia. It looks like Gambian people are becoming more and more belligerent to one another. But my argument is that insulting the president or the first lady or any politician should not and cannot be a crime. It should be protected by the First Amendment, freedom of speech, right? It may be immoral, it may not be the right thing to do, but insulting them, as long as you are not using fighting words or you are not doing what in law is called disorderly conduct, that speech should be protected, in my view. So I know currently these are hot issues, and I posted a poll on the Gambian perspectives. It's still, I was trying to see how people think about these issues, but that is my position on that. And then we want to discuss that briefly, and then I also want to look at the issue of the new twist in Sainabou Mbaye case, what the state is up to. And finally, we will look at the poverty report on the Ghana. I'm going to let you guys, you and Dr. Conte, have your say on this, and then we will proceed.
Yeah, I will let Mr. Conte go.
Thank you, Mr. Jata. Thank you, Dr. Conte. Yeah,
it's a funny develop Conte Cole.
Yeah, jalba ko binta koli Conte. Kole jamu non ko ra kambe jalba ni kala koli ni Conte nyoma dami yalon jaloli ka history lo. Anyway, on a serious note, the English word lie, L-I-E, English word lie. This is not a grammar class. This is not arrogance. I am not an intellectual. You guys are. But I think I have a right to clarify and talk to Gambians. The English word lie is not an insult. Natara nunca mandika kangola fo na parliament o kono. Nkadiam hakil malet o na local lang suwa kong flakang o jola na ranka wole foje. Mambalande. But inka angale kangola fo. If you're going to go into something, go there 100%. So let's respect the English explanation of the word lie. Gameno nikai ko you are lying, it will come on nendi rolet. Doctor meet America jan. Mr. Jata, I assume if I meet jan.
Right.
Ise moja ko president, Mr. President, ibetara nyu ibesa sa yala fam. Aka ko Mr. President, stop lying. Ikaw jet. Wala ikaw jet. So na rambe angale ko no for na deputy mo ko ndada madam ma mo moy diamila kanwala. Ning translation necessary dengan that translation. Ibajala fan deputy jama begin this and they can easily lay across their points. But we speak in English. Then let's dive into English. And let's respect context, contextual culture. Let's respect that too. Even grammar aside, the English word lie, Babakar to Monjata, with all due respect, ntelinge interview nung din ni sunkudu koyo feri ka fay farsedi even tis kanung ila punkono October or January of 2001 kabri winter no ntele wo Ibrahima Kol say moral ko da maybe ten suudi so ngar respect to ibaka bar Fabakar bar ndere Fabakar jibile hanaram famal be nyem place do na tele flow be walida Fabakar albe Gambia sama kada nyam is very very wrong. The English word lie is not an insult. You look out for profanity. There's a difference between the word lie and what could be termed a profanity. Nim tumanjay finda ndabaka tumanjay support ndaka Gambia leje. What like doctor, Mr. Jara. Nim tumanjay finda nang, let me borrow from a word that you just used, belligerent or insolent. Even an iota of insolence mantara tumanjay la statement auto. Nko Fabakar le mankaraji mansal mu me karandi angale kanwala mantara brakana alin kamfana wonan kadiyamte alla nying hauso kuna to membe belarim baroka nsal be karandi anga Fabakar dem tijaltino. But you cannot differentiate that the word lie, L-I-E, is not an insult, it's not a profanity. Tumanjay mamoneng, the opposite of truth is lie. Let me borrow from what a German philosopher once said about the word lie, L-I-E. Yalong Dr. Kabri nibe diam kanten domanim sa foi ko alnga tumanjay ko discuss. But ayajel aleming. This is more than natural coincidence. I'm glad you guys brought this up. Friedrich Nietzsche is a German philosopher. Convictions are worse enemies to the truth than lies. Let me say that again. Convictions are worse enemies to the truth than lies. So Tonya Jawo wole mufaniati. Ndola African culture jamaa ba for the most part niko mo ikono yefani afa kamera ya nene. But Friedrich Nietzsche ko ako Tonya Tonya jauba manke fanya fa damati. Tonya jaw kumba badama fa ni manka. Tonya jaw kumba wolen adamadin wallata minna a fa convince minna wo adamadin sifa I call it a traditionalist akatara jela kenaba jaharaw nyaati wala the sky is blue akoy ko non tamam blue jentenga green nake. He or she is convinced of such a humongous lie that the sky is not blue, it is green. And he will be ready to kill, to perpetrate such a lie. One of these philosophers, he put it tersely, convictions are worse enemies to the truth than lies. What Tumanjai said was, Ndaraminje, Ako Sidinjai Mempo, is a lie. Anong tonyale. Sidinjai, you are lucky Papa Kuli is not in the house. Ndolden family also hakronte mo nambo kala ngana diam plafo moto sa kadun ci sole ka bo Mr. Jada maybe man ñolom back but doctor ni o meta ñobule Mr. Jada gambia be halako le kono billahi wallahi tallahi Sidin Jai of all people fa bagare tombon jata these people ya non ko natara ñing government tan yitolbe balula monala katu ñambi kanka ngote bola sarakun ngote bola e kolbe kuyare ni min baade mo al hakil ngoy ngamone fale nim famale bije mbi diam la kantene Ibrahim diamta fama e tonyale faye akaya ko Allah nyin jalangol ñul ila ko man dianye a fama miya wulo they are enemies to me wala fa fama ngal Gambia Quran ndati je na lonnal min tata Saudi na ya beke Saudi Arabia culture parade na gamme culture o fayjena wo kana mo ke shaytano le ke kenken idda makatu ñoku bokala dara na lonnal jibe Gambia ma fay be dol jeul bakata lonnal le ñita sile ka ñing kamon den kanyum fote ni ko moy ko you are lying in the African culture yes I understand hada kamra ya nenne wodo kana fan ya banke Sidin Jai fan ya le banke ning banko do lente a serious nation billahi baro fon le be resign amanke health ministry damat but Gambia there are no laws as I speak to you doctor Mr. Jata with all due respect billahi as I speak to you science think of what Microsoft is planning with the new Surface Pro fo ñimbuka dol sono mo jiki jakaba ndolla sidol be poto rek mbe halakiring musol be todale ni foto da breka marso kono sukra marso kono jara so mo basayta da dawda ka bon katon fo koyna albuka bala fo musoli munasabila alhalo be teng mo fi mo yen dankale ba sunyata keta ñu le minno mama ñol jamano ye fangono ñamen tol mam fanno ñam you know muni asabu doctor mi sa jara ya muni asabu baba ka to mo ñata ñol sifal dem Sidi Njay ñol sifal ko nga fa bakar long ma fo personally de fa bakari over 20 years nka si nka nyolo cover ndindindini nka dala fala bunko ning ala tema ma fo ke banya ngane jawle soto bani da ko nyambi kanka mo de bora ita be depend on kan you want to use government coffers as a career source no first ko mo fo mi anka manke to nyati ndada madama all the opposition deputy li bele nyata work out la num ibe filije ya fo kalbe min kala lake and they have to look for an amendment look Mr. Jada wallahi if a National Assembly member is not accorded that freedom of speech, what about the average Joe like you and I? That's the question I have for any thinking Gambian. Tumanjay man kasifo. Opposite of truth is a lie. Sidinja mu adamanin sifa minti nyulo. Nte dron nga njawnya wana for Gambia kabindol mbuka times or kampala sabu nga for Gambia mbuka fem publicize. And I earlier discussion about us. Nte mantara na kan ka brag. Ndega na doko membre jenkana kankata non freedom tente jono la Gambia salary je men son tol jono this is not bragging comfortable wonan ka diamte so ngo Gambia ko altamral ta su society kirma katara diam kan ye ma fo yenni ngulu den ko dela ndol kata dinkole kono because identity politics family politics tribal politics meanwhile Samsung Galaxy they are thinking of the new gadget and insensitive by fintilana Nantola Missouri Jamba want to go any other engineering school or a science and technology school or even an ordinary community college. You look at 15-year-old kids or 16, 17, what they are discussing to better their society. Ikatara high school America jam. Inteman state dollar, bandola jam. Ika high school ta ika fo federal program dola bi ika fa ko A+. Ika fa A+. Ngala America bila so inteman bandola je yaso. Ika dinni mo je dinni mereng. Nianoko you are promised yekuke fanna ika scholarship ika fai A+. Wait a lajana ika tomone ajibe if you are interested in a career a vocational skill CNA yalamba mumfen ikatra high school you have those credit hours ndol nga mo furngol soto Sunjata keta nyul masum man finde greater than man finde moto man finde fossil fuel man finde sunjata keta nyul e fangol balino nyami ndol kelobe Ukraine bi wo control impact furiya man tam wala mamone na ko me invite me to a challenge a debate ndol le food and tol because ngani mo si fala so household kon sunjata keta let me repeat Gambia intellectual nyi moy ndol nte hani massas degree nta nyini la ngato le batalen challenge ngo sunjata keta nyul jamano la Africa ya fanno nyami ndol ka tubabol so 1324 to 1325 Mansa Musa of Mali Gambia batele kotono ay soto kele Africa soto ke faye stanol sikale kataka dunia so ngole tubabol si Africa Mansa Musa ay Africa advertise dunia tubabol ni arabol ya right wale si ala paleso kono arabol le kala history safeno ndole ka dunia sono bar bi Ukraine na kelo fon ya sabu chanta mbuga fenko non fayen to le fuda momo yamran kam fata wonan kanyefo challenge me to a debate call Halifa Sallah or anybody any of these political parties ala foy papa ko meta nyim fona freedom la ananga debate ibuka hani ananga debate ndole fuda sunyada keda nyole minno Samori Touré nyole minno PhD holder Clinton Gambia at that time ike fangol baloni no is a pabirin Clinton musul nani musul lulo mo islamo fa manna baratele ke be samba to aboli o kolto nyi secret sunya jele anani nyin kan safa to abol tara jele saka zulu la ko jibe ka kenya iko munaka nyul bambandita they don't need any dopamine injection. They don't need any neurotransmitter boost. But he can motivate you like kunkol muta. Samore Touré Francais krende 7 years. Iman tools no ndole fuda. Intellectually ndole fuda. Academically ndole fuda ida behind the run behind. But nga bra le continue because malafa ko do fa manyana men follow.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Thank you very much. That's very inspiring. Truly appreciate that. I totally agree with you. Tumanjai was right in the way he called out Sidi Jai. He called his statement a lie. And I understand many Gambians will agree with that. What Sidi Jai said is not true. It's not accurate. My concern, however, is that Sid could have used a more acceptable language. Lie, I agree, is the truth, is blunt. But it describes the situation, but it's not polite. I think we can agree on that. Anytime you call somebody out and describe his statement as a lie, it may be true, but certainly it is not polite. It's not the best way to call it. You could manikolko malo iko kumo nga yafo nyame, right? Iko mo eko turani bilo asi kontan but nika ni so imunin so that's comfort. So and since National Assembly is a controlled house, to be able to be a place that is conducive for debate, I mean genuine debate that will foster production of ideas. I can understand they want the National Assembly laws, as described in the standing orders, wanted to promote that kind of environment where each member is free to express their views in a language that is more acceptable. It may be critically, radically different, very critical of the conventions or of the standards, but still respectful of others, so that that atmosphere of friendship and working together is possible. So I think from that perspective, I would recommend Tumanjai and others like her to be able to articulate their viewpoints and counter, opposing ideas in a language, that could be strong language, but also at the same time polite and respectful of others. Because at the end of the day, these people are supposed to work together in the interests of the Gambian people. What happens in the National Assembly is kind of a lesson for the whole country. It kind of sets the mood for the country. So I think the bare minimum of that can be rightfully expected of National Assembly members. I totally agree with your point of view, but I still think some degree of politeness and respect for fellow members is quite necessary. I know Fabakary could have. There's argument that Fabakary himself has not been very polite all the time to members. He often called them to order them or yell at them, sit down like high school boys. And for some members who are particularly not very accepting of his leadership, who see his leadership as speakership as illegitimate, particularly have very serious problems with respecting and complying with his orders. So perhaps he needs to also tone down his language and be able to talk to members in a more polite way, rather than yelling at them, sit down, like high school boys. So maybe you should find a better way to describe, to refer to them, to address them, rather than that way. Dr. Conte.
Well, I mean, for they, Yalon, Baba, I mean, for natural, opposition members, they also had gotten up and Ntuma Findika Nabe Fintinyola. They may not have even a quorum, and that's what it is. Yanda wala kalano. But for Gambia Yalon Nini Diamuta feel from Moy, Safako Ye Nene. That is in our culture. Aniko Moiko Imatatoya Fokan. The camera Koiki Nene. But me for Jahal now is that for Bering Jamabi Kamanya Menfonsa Mano or Yamaban. So that's what I'm in conflict with. And Baba for naming for again, near the African Empire, we were strong. Our people were strong, and they were able to make a lot of stuff, and they were totally self-sufficient. Because I example of the one time when I was in college, I went to look for a job. Eventually, I was hired. Ika cotton ika dada nyaming komo akono go bicycle pedal o nyang. Now I remember Ndola Primary School. It was right next to, not too far from the school. And then the director of education and even the minister in the school to visit. But I saw that here in America. And then I asked the guy, wow, this is interesting. You know about this? Yes, when I was going to primary school, we had, somebody who was using something similar like that, So, question all in the how did white people, how were they able to get those things and that thing? And then they set up a company called an apparel company, and they were making billions and billions. So, and then sometimes this is the Gambia, is the mirror. Mobe America Karang, Yeta school, Itanyanta necktie and student Yenta Altarasi officer, Moma Lefka Dokusifa Dovananke. So, and then Tolfarana Bankoni, you see that na Bankoni cannot be off. And then Gambia, yesterday I was speaking to Alcalo, one village in Combo East. It takes him 6 months. But can you empower the women also to be doing gardening? Alpha more mobilized, put care of and so forth. So because Combo was known for that. So but sir, everybody is totally reliant on us in diaspora. America, mano, koi, that is that's toxic. You don't see Americans eating it here. So now they found a market in the Gambia, even though our population is less. But if you have 1 million people relying on that, and you are a vendor, that's going to be a blessing for you. And these are things that they me and the Jahari, Ninga Nyabiti, Yula Multimania Longo in Jamabenyoka. All of a sudden now they are the ones who are. I think it was a mistake for the president to put two former APRC members. If we nominated members, in the assembly, at least he could have taken sitting judge somewhere else. So Gambia economy is sinking. The Gambian dollar see within the last 4 weeks, the Gambian dollar still have value. It went down by $4 to a dollar because now it's 58. Now I want you to think about maybe sometime in September, it was 50, 51 or 52. So until we are arguing about minimal stuff, me along go, those things can be solved. But we are not looking at monetary and fiscal policies. And I come into control Kanye Corolla Katana. And the people who are back in the villages are the ones who are older Batakang. Nema most of them be Makolajang. Therefore, I see that even na farming how people who never wanted Purkana Bako Sai Walla Fanga Danuro Purkana Dokwala. So you cannot help all of them. But by and large, you engage in Kavako Ningemako Atolo Mojava Mona and Molu Moworo. Nieman Bodo sort of at least 1 month. Do fanam fu afana I okay. So Gambia la case is it's very sad, and the government is not looking into any fiscal policies, monetary policies. Why likewise, and then we're gonna continue on like this, So Gambia dollar C about simple, but I mean, so Yakodo Kila Moli, yeah, they'll get the big dollar C, abundance of it. But ni o chiketa marse daga fengol be serta. But when you fana ni yaho mol fana ye mol be siri manson ka dogo okay. And then fana ye mol bula puruka fenke ye. Wole se la kodo fontinya is afa ko nati me la kodo ta jama ba tala. So ning ko nyinga jahalo watan don be diaspora, and then when you sit down, it's a wal jama live in Gambia. But in Gambia, if you have $5,000-$10,000, it's obe kata daniro. Instead of you putting okodonyan to yake back in the economy, because so perpetual poverty in the country is going to. So I can give you one. I want to just say, because I may be biased when it comes to Tuma. Tuma's father was the managing director of the bank I used to work at, and our telephone on 368 used to ring on my desk, and I remember seeing Tuma when she was 8 years old. So I may be biased, in defending her. But yes, Hussein telephone used to ring on my desk, the phone number 368. I will never forget that. But Tuma even for Tonyala. But I named in the parliament when Fabakar asked Tuma to leave, they also should have gotten up. So Gambia people are just selfish to an extent, whereby na banko drong adwa drong because bunyin boso nyin kas akata sulo minna o sulo den dol mbe jump lal to wonder about it in a few days. I will, because I just cannot accept what is going on in our country, and I come to go dwa drong ale mako drong. And then the religious leaders also are not talking about. I think we'll talk about that. So the culture and how we call ourselves Muslims, but do we really practice Islam? I don't know. But Baba even for Tonya Nidi Amanda Badeka Kamfale, a kid demi, Emira bidding within the wati, na Kebala Kadoku Sifa Menke, na Kebali till Itilin Tayame. And inside from Mulbi Karsal Salkera, Mulbi Yok, Sonkara Salkera, like Ave Talo Wati. Tonya and Tuldo Malam Betadame. What one about Duaro Ninduaro Alison Markway? Keba. Ngambara Mr. Jatan, but down Danjan, Katin the Fana Yunko Academy Bakale, and a culture to Yandayame. I don't know. Maybe I went to St. Augustine's, and you also went there. So no, he went to the other school we call Gambia High School,
Who went to Gambia? Collie?
Okay,
Yeah.
So
I went to 12. I only did 6 for Gambia.
Yeah.
Did my all over sense.
Yeah, so keba mbandu nga down in Kokoto Jang. Gambia la Konye is very, and then if you want to try to tell them to do the right, equate them to Bawalt, you know, and then man, we went to school. Like I'm not going to Malta, the current London to the Kungo, Nisa the Gambia, Ikabuko, Ikadamfule.
I think the problem is, Dr. Conte. I think the problem is, part of the problem is that when we get education in the Gambia, and this is probably true in much of the third world, education system are kind of perpetuating the colonial mentality. In fact, there is when I was going to undergraduate school, I used a textbook that was written by I think a professor of my profession called the professor is called Dick Pitt. He actually wrote a book called the Geography of Power, and he's you can clearly tell he's a Marxian scholar, but he gave a pretty good dissection of the global geography of power. And you can see in his writings how the third world intellectuals have metamorphosized into assuming the identity of the colonial master. If you look at the power centers of the world, in New York City, in London, in Tokyo, in Geneva, in Brussels, this is where the global powers are located. This is where the World Trade Centers, the New York Exchange, the World Bank, the IMF, all these global powers are headquartered, right? And many of African and third world intellectuals, they work from these places, and they work in close proximity with the descendants of the colonial master. And many of these people don't see themselves as part of their countries, as part of the third world. They see themselves more as part of these global centers of power, and they work in their interests, right? So, so this is, in Marxian terms, this is a clear alienation, right? You are totally alienated from your people, from the views and perception of your people, their interests, and their preoccupations, right? You become another of their colonial master, right? So, if you expand this, you can see how the African educator and the third world educator feels and thinks, right? And no wonder you said many of us, after getting university degrees, we no longer want to do any other job but to put on a tie and sit in an office. That alone is a colonial mentality. When colonialists were in Gambia, Africans were mainly used as secretaries and office assistants and stuff like that. Mostly started with the English-speaking Akuts and stuff like that, right? So many of our people who were going to school aspire for these positions and stuff, and nothing changed since then, right? So that is why I am particularly looking for a potential leader in Gambia who is very radical, and that is why I am very interested in PDOIS, because I think DOI is the only party that has views that are totally radical, that will bring in something totally different from what we have ever known. We have to take a totally different path to development. Not this path of borrowing, taking loans from World Bank and IMF, and taking grants and tailoring our economy on the guidelines of IMF and World Bank. It's not going to get us anywhere. We have to take a radical U-turn. When I was a kid, the communities I grew up were self-sufficient. My people, they feed themselves all year round. They eat rice, they eat staple, they eat everything that they grow themselves. And all year round, they still have leftovers. Now, no household in the Gambia eats what they grow. eat anything that is produced in the Gambia. Everything comes from imports. So gradually, our rural communities were destroyed. They cannot produce anything. All the young and able-bodied people moved to the urban areas to look for opportunities. Now, those opportunities no longer exist, even in the urban areas. Most young people now are looking abroad, offshore. That's why we have this backdoor problem. Because the urban centers are not, we used to talk about rural-urban drift. Now we don't even talk about that. That has totally disappeared in our language now. It is backward. Because the urban centers were the greener pasture for the young people then. Now that doesn't exist. Now all young people are looking for offshores. Banjul and Serekunda is not enough. There is more suffering there than even in the rural areas. Everybody wants to jump ship and go abroad. So we have to take a radical view. I am looking for a president in the Gambia who will come up with an economic package, economic plan that is totally radical, that is looking inward, ramp up production in the country, stop this exploitation of our resources and exporting them abroad. Our minerals and all that stuff are going abroad. Government is not even receiving any revenue. We don't even know what is being mined in our country, where it is going, what the proceeds are. We have no idea. We are in the Gambia, nothing is produced, everything is imported. We are running out of foreign currency. Our young people cannot find any employment. You have to produce in all economics starts with production. If you cannot produce, forget about economics. It's not going to work. So, Gambia has many problems. The problems are complicated, but we need a radical U-turn. And increasingly, our educated people are becoming a failure. It is unfortunate. When I look at the Gambia government, everywhere I look, it's my people, my generation, my classmates in high school, my classmates in college. Everywhere, president's office, all the way down. And many of these people are very hardworking, very smart. I know them very well. Very smart and well-meaning. But they operate in a system that's bigger than them. I don't know, man. It's complicated. But now that we have taken this thread, Collie, I don't know if you want to add something to this. Otherwise, I'm gonna inject in the new poverty report that just came out on the Gambia. Briefly, I don't have the details of it, but I can slide that into it, and then after that I'll move on to our final topic.
Sure.
Briefly.
Not to have some
What's that?
Not to have some video. To have some video later.
Yeah.
I YouTube. I nkwe danding ojele danding on tolga minfo jibinda daral kamera danding ol.
Right.
I will warman bal letao. Wol warman bali tata fo sabana ni lulu woro. I banko fandije aka manol fi ikam. So samanda ka oli jibo. Ngala atena ki male be steering wo ira o adamma pet. To awol dum baka manu dama nyama komintolo. So ni fono ka ko manol nyin jibo. So manol nyin yalo mano dum ndemo sama dollar. So manol nyin nganga dama no mba fulela. Because ala tan nyama arkana ko kam na tuba moro. Ni kese kilim fi wo ka kese jelle wulu asiata bak ala le nyin nemo ke hakili mali. Adama no ni la self-inflicted poverty will be Africa. Trouble ya inflicting kane bandol fona nga inflicting fon kam more worse than trouble liming. Wala o jibindal aka manol fi wala kon. So Mr. Jada.
Yeah.
Neither Pakistan be or India, especially Pakistan, India fana ya sodola. Masingo do biye nkwaje neither birka marso do tiasira masingo musol ka tiosi minnaten tiasi gina mol gina misa ko le ka ke ba ke birka ba. A masingo nying the same engineering technology lam. Ika sukur kalole taya bula kono. Masimbale itolka a plug kramole bala. Isani mone misal what tiasira ngonye. Ndeka jam hakili malede. War in Ukraine, way Africa conquered. Barakanda ya bale wote. Billahi wallahi. Ukraine nyano ko they have less than 2 months. It all man soma kendo fonso. Galas wole katu jila jedro. Wala bentol feed la. So wasukur kanol Pakistan kolo. Ani san ngamodo la ngabota jata atata jivise mo fi ngala atata jivise atata la village jojo. ni dindingol nyingol je nyin sungrenol Pakistan dindingol inata ka bendum. When you look at their dentition, you can tell these people are very, very healthy. Ndebe as a nurse, mbesiri nye dindingol ngele ila just a head to a quick head to ngole kadron on camera, right? They are eating very healthy. Wallahi, that's like 2 minutes into the video. I made that assessment, and I'm just a very stupid nurse, right? Guess what? In the video, it grow down. They eat everything organic. In the ni continue to jibe. How thick and brunette they look. In Yingol, wallahi, didn't mera. Sungrin Jamal and the Nathan traveling in Benduni like village onyento. Adra jani wo months and months, years and years, ndekela video jibele, wo masimo minkela sukro dada, because American sukro is very, very, very anti-health. Trabola domoron coming bedom, America is worse. Genetically engineered food. It will be Monsanto. If you guys read about Monsanto, you will see what I'm saying. They make it a law. Monsanto, you know, lobbying and in the Western world. If a congressman or lobby, they make laws to favor Monsanto. Ni tauta yela turo ya bonangambea samana jabita jail. Monsanto la turo be na by for say. All of those are genetically modified or engineered. Gambian tol korta ka sukur kalol fiba. Nga liol kumol kana liol janide. Hani pisco volunteer ina kumbe e kan nindi libo la latre mon kumol fa. Ndol korta ka sukur kalol fi. Ara bar woning Musa Drame kenol be wafi. Misa jata ntani manyolom bake ya you see why nka kamfani nka diam. For indol dankale. Ukraine melan ko galaso le kajije ibesira America janda. I don't know what state you are in, but sign galaso besala kaji ite fon finanola.
I'm your neighbor. I'm in Kansas.
See? I know Kansas. I was in Kansas just yesterday.
Kansas. We should get together at some point.
So wamuna reality. Kansas, Missouri, wamuna reality. Indola is the Midwest. I know Midwest kaskumalde. Man Alaska si anin Canada ma fona. But yalo Midwest la Canada, Minnesota nyol wolbe Canada, Canadian border ban. Canada Detroit no Michigan nyol.
Yeah, I'm in Kansas. I'm in Kansas City.
See. So for the most part, Ukraine kara Europe. Samadu me favor. Bantolse sukurkalo fino le Gambian sukuro ka sukurkalo bana. What mon dinimal kankamal bele ka sukurkalo fi brekam. Wallahi. Mobile ka kamla dutol be mobile so kono nyam. Ani lemunol ni tuba nyol. Nsem fango feed. Wana wudini woni nyol senata. Wallahi ni je fankale ko nyul they are eating healthy. It was just my background wala tande na ko nyulo. If you do a quick head to talk, you can tell they eating something very nutritious. Iko ifango la butter, ibaka package butter sande. Nisi tulo ikawale ka butter. Subhanallah. Ndola bankole rich to Pakistan when it comes to agriculture. Ndol ko taka liol bondi banka liol wa fi ngal ko sukro. Sukro da sa ser samafu. Ukraine wala ñu bombarder samafu ay ke faliye fu France. Mfam fi sunja da keta ñol mamoli e fangol fi ñami. Atra hani kindergarten kilimandra lolo no Gambia. Ndol ko taka ko bi ni ñin karam. Wonan kale ko ndole fuda. Ñi mamonen wallahi to ñala ñinte. Ndol fuda bakel. Ndol sa sukru kalol fi no le ngo ni tada brika makko makabekel village obi e ka fay kabekel. In the 90s 1996 97 ndola gadina bale be area la je so nka tiole fi penyem ni mbakar sambuya kada kiti la udlalto nka tiole fi ndola da Saudi educated land I fen hayna banko mu jama mi hayna at a very long time. I'm not praising him, but wallahi ndol baka na tiol wafi de anum bukata ka wafi masa kunda saro no akam fa sama sen wala penyem ni bakar sambuya na kunko lebije ningo tiol nyi harvest yanon ka moneke to abolle generators low ye generator donate ngalong kabrin jawro jamano ye generator samba nan kabekel abe maraki sabara berka mon ko lon kamen foytol yalon mal fo generator nyimbi jel han kabide mal fa bi jel ndeklen so general sifa lono gambia barende musulo men ka ba tamanla without among ataya himje e jeke jota be furi nyoka yabe ke kacha furul ni Manchester United la jem furin kacha ye na meda masango yetinya ndol dindi man na tion ka samba woto wallahi all you have to do subhanallah all you have to do Mr. Jata masingo nyin Allah tiya boto nyin be bonje dron nali tion nyin tay aliaba a bonje dron aka beke tuloti dulino instantly no mandra diam la katun dale warta wallahi nga nyin jale so sa Mr. Jata adama baro ye 38 million to 40 million me use kana UN ka dusa no nyor sama nanje wo generate jelebe wo kono generate nyinka isansulata o karsino division wo kodo Adam Barrow nin dusano nyole min pasar ila padiemo fo dati fan anin force le nyi account of 35 mil anin kodol min be kata doctors Samate health minister are you listening alka kodo min be pasar wo generate son jelle bije aka generate nyin ataka tulu bondina nyine topoto imam kron fonso kabekel in those days wallahi Mr. Jata instant dulina ko le fine dulino nyin yellowish green very nutritious. I have a background in health. One of so-called intellectuals, some of them are doctors, some of them are this. Ndeki yeral anna diam anna. Parengkata freedom mo diam jibi kanat. Na fogambelo nyine kama ngi kenkenena. Ibeka son kanat. Yalo ni karanda barako tije ila karon sumafu. That's why we die and history doesn't remember us. Ni make lahul mahfuz ye make aljana nyino kama. Wallahi ke gambe dingolla future kama so that history can remember you. Mao Zedong China Ching, akonya the Cultural Revolution.
Wow.
Industrial Revolution, probably it started in Britain, right? Angleterre. Where are those Gambians man ko batara sir in Sudan na felo nyajo be jolona Mario ndala fanga fenneke. History said remember me na bar ngake tele kam. Gambia de ngolako ndol be tordalente. Dulino potom jelede bi misa jara jelle. Paraka jo jelle la. Dulen poto jelle, ni dulen poto bondi je yela pasu bondi je. Yedine wala launch bondi je ye cash pa bondi je fembo katuje wana corruption be siaring ni lo da police da silokan ika motovatiol kunt ika bantiol kunt hayla traffic ila nyim parking light mambetia ila nyim backlight mambetia ila moto jantense ibe kodo kunt label kadi la jo ni cash pa bondi je ye sondol son bondi je ni musola asubi son bondi je fembo katuje mi sajad an nyim banke jarje sa nyata nyim diamo kelan to la nyim formo dawati ni jarje sa nyane bayta kala ine neta kala ndol se bal bula Gambia agro ikafanyarle animal husbandry Gambia Ukraine's galaso le kajija America jang galaso le kajija animal husbandry teken wala jang ko mi Gambia ndol le nyanta tuabol sola akamta manso musa tuabol so nyami billahi de nyimu tonyal this is not coming from me this is real mansa musa de Africa la wealth atale mo mansa polo de mia advertise Gambia benum atele kono sakon na nyim birka ma ira kata tele baba right abebe no mansa musa la marawol kono kabrina mari de mo janata bina Ghana empire Songhai Empire Natalaba. Right? We all did this history. You guys understand the lessons, right? But in the left side, what teachers see they're going to inspire our young ones. This last exam, Wasi, the poorest result in our history. The poorest. They can speak like this. They didn't all motivate you. Listen, Facebook is not going to do it. If you abuse Facebook, you're going to be the poorest. And then I remember one talk at the school bus on Gambia school, Ninka Sena Africa, so I come back on so you can do it. But the exam on Kibeda. Fankamadol bilan ki bele to koma so at a young age in Katarafen discuss and Yinka Chasif and Katu will draw self-reliance. How are we going to benefit from our legal education? Nse bal bulanwa na surkalo fi sukuro kapona Gambia mel anu ne Pakistan ko ye ko sukuro kenyami nse jara billahi ne Pakistan ko ye ko sukuro bondi nyami it's so easy masimol ka be bondi instant yakela mono kan ndol hakilo le fo ndol dankale imagine a do no so any more one wouldn't call that's an animal. You want to see an animal? Look at Dusan. Mol biji musole ndemin kan call ja wole ka sam ka kampa. Odo kam me ko observer me tanyin. You understand? But doctor, Mr. Jada.
Yeah.
Nimro tata kema banta. Ay dimbal juruma. Ay ko na ko kari. Wallahi mbe do mala bi maso. Fu mo ñen nya jol na bang ye Adam Barrow jeba ñim falwo sambaran dusano de kada 38 million ka spend wol kunna kabekel masingo ñon jelebe kono dulini poto mu jelede your brain should be able to process this information. I know I speak very fast, but dusano ila brain ñen daka ñim process is que no e picte ñaw ñama ila brain so ñim process no le wo 38 million or more atole na la jele spend Adam Barrow nte hanina bengol billahi ndad la Adam Barrow la kanta. He doesn't have the mental preparation. He doesn't. Wallah, he doesn't. No, Mr. Jara, this is not funny.
You are right. Thank you very much, Mr. Collins. Thank you for that that input. Very well said. Since we have taken, I wanted us to touch on briefly, Dr. Conte. There's this report that the poverty rate in the Gambia stands at 13% actually. And well, in my view, this is if that is true, 1% poverty rate is bad enough, right? But comparatively, 13%, if that is the actual rate of poverty in the Gambia, it is not terribly bad. In the US, the poverty rate, I understand, is at 11%, even though there's a high bar for to qualify as a poor person or a poor household in the US. The minimum income requirement is a lot higher than what it is in Gambia. So in US, it's around 11.6%. In the Gambia, it is reportedly 13%. I want to question the validity of that report for the simple reason that these international bodies, international organizations, they rely on data generated in the Gambia itself, Gambian research. So I don't think they conduct their own research into this thing. They rely on government data. And one could argue against the quality of that data. If you look at the other metrics in the Gambia, I mean the economic metrics in the Gambia, it would be very surprising that the poverty rate is only 13%. Looking at the unemployment rate in the country, looking at the income levels in the country, looking at the general economic problems in the country, 13% poverty rate, even with remittances. I know many families are kept out of poverty because of the remittances they get from abroad. But even with that, one could legitimately question the quality of this report or the survey that generated this report. Dr. Conte, do you have anything to say on this? Mr. Colley also? And then after that, I will go to my final topic, which will be pretty brief.
No, I'll let Mr. Colley go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Jada.
Yeah.
I think earlier on you mentioned something close to a very important topic many Africans should pay serious attention to. Whenever the IMF, they come up with SAPs. SAPs are structural adjustment programs. That's just a fancy term to beguile us into biting the bait. You see so many economists from Africa, they go to Harvard, you tell them, you ask them this simple question, talk to me about IMF or the World Bank's policies, especially regarding structural adjustment programs. Whenever they give a loan to a third world country, that third world country will be lucky if they actually benefit from 75% of that money. The remaining 25%, that's where the SAPs go through. I'm not an economist. I have a health background, but it's just simple reading and then listening to those who know. Okay? That 25% that reaches the third world country, especially Gambia. The IMF or the World Bank, they will force that particular third world country to abide by the rules and regulations of how to use that money. This is why since colonial era, from Jawara's time, or Mobutu's time in Zaire, or Sékou Touré's time, or Senghor's time, Léopold Sédar Senghor in Senegal, African and third world countries have been getting loans and loans. If you total all those loans together, we should have had our own energy efficient industries by now. This is just common sense. You're not going to see this in any university. Wallahi, no university would teach you this. There's a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Probably you guys have read it. John Perkins. I knew about SAPs way before I read John Perkins' book, but he didn't mention. I don't even think he mentioned something about SAPs. Okay, so when they give you that loan, when they give a third world that loan, they condition you. You cannot use this money on energy and electricity. No, that's a no-go area. Number one. Number two, you have to create or enable what is called privatization. Allahu Akbar. You say economic degree holder Jina America University Jan. Privatization is the way. That's why we should privatize. They feed you vomit and you keep eating and regurgitating and eating the same vomit. You know why they call for privatization? Read the history of Latin America. Why they wanted to kill Fidel Castro so many times. and so many other resistant Bolivarian leadership in Latin America. Because, there were so many companies, United Banana, United this, United that, from America over here. They go over there to grow bananas, seize their oil, bring them over here. When their presidents resist, they kill them. So they kill national industrialization to promote so-called privatization. Mr. Jata, kabrin jawra jamano Gambia loan minta siatal de. Arambarona tai almost a double. Wollo na ay generate kendo samana pour na wek na electricity ngasolo Gambia be doarante nyami. Hamburg, the city of Hamburg, ako kurang mi use. Woli sada Gambia le energy expenses beti. Ngadi am hakil male. Kabrin jawra jamano. Ndol kanyi loan membeta. SAP, you see how they ruin us. They puppeteer us. With all this intellection, we cannot fathom what's going on in this world. This is the reason Tabakara Gamenol Kulidla, New York, Atlanta, Gamenol Bedauda, because Malifing Kulumbaya Jikol Fintinije. Yankanya Jojolo, Nakaranina economic degree, can you understand, Mr. Jata? SAP, Atelka for Moleko, this is how you're going to use this money. It's not a freebie, it's not a gratuitous gift, it's not a boon, it's a loan. But the IMF and World Bank, especially IMF, for money. They created this for themselves, Western civilization, in Bretton Woods in the summer of 1945. How to control the global wealth. And that's what is happening. How to defeat the gold-backed currencies. And then usher in what we have today. Look at this mess. Capitalism is now suffering. We're all paying a price. Bretton Woods, 1945. New Hampshire here. Gambia Karnal is Dolbafli Fayin. So say Alimbalal. Wo SAP nying gambe loan tana wala nambuka energy efficient industry mbuka sono ni koy bo kala dron alla president ni bafla you have broken protocols iba kuditala or yal suspend so president kilo nyim fana a third one ni IMF la mol bina jibi kaje nteke interview no mo bino observer one sometimes you can actually CIA officer le ni kat ibe killing wala ibe killing itib galam fa bari ka fam bona IMF right these are John Perkins ka fa ñun le EHM, Economic Hitmen. If you read that book, you will cry. Wallahi, you guys buy it on Amazon. Read it. Wallahi. Yalong Londo ka nyini nyami university book mo kanani London. University ka mo nka tuition no jo. Wo SAP le Africa ruin. Wala sabun ka loan ta kabri mamol jamano, secretary ngol jamano, jawara jamano. All of you were young. You were not even around when secretary. Yeah. Right? But hanka bimbo loan ko le jo kam. Bari mang nawe kendo no Gambia kada to aboli pareda komen kurma kama wato minna ala nying akosombo dam yole folo kele imanson ka fon adara loan tan that bankrupt Ghana kabrin CIA be komen kurma kuritala de minna Ghana the coffers you know how much was left $500 isa akadembe fa fada subhanallah ntolu mo furo ntolu ninna ta janka fo George Floyd ndabo kada progressive la because Nico be diamala multa understand na Kwame Nkrumah Ghana na account $500 to the nunje because I love ako Africa tida no kuranga koma to able doing as I speak right now Dr. Conte Mr. Jata to able song Africa la new western powers menyo ibikala fi Africa ye generate kendol soto or nuclear technology to generate electricity no because no gonna that's at the expense or detriment of Europe not expense per se but detriment of Europe itana koko tanolam bulu nyama itana in the mineral tatalam bulu nyama because we can now start production and industrialization itano munyinet wana nie loan di mola you can condition every loan to abole di mola you can condition it. This is how you're going to use it wol loan ning ay jumala live improve ay nasilol cement kabrin jawra jamano be loan ning tala presence of a sign gamen tol fon lokere go to other countries you will cry wallahi you will cry anum diamond ben tole bulu katami dunia biya mineral resources be Africa be katami mo bela. But when you're intellectuals, when they fail you, and when you have a corrupt leadership, this is what happens. SAP lekana, ika EHM leki nantolkan economic hitman. IMF ikabna wa barabe CIA officer le. You understand? A CIA officer. What lekana masquerading as IMF officials. You see these things? Nte tano la nyato mangsi mbenyulu jibe la nyajol be jolona billahi Mr. Jata ndela jamo kasi abake de wanam bukal na jam wato bela because what I have to say is a lot nyin forum sifal to ketanola billahi wallahi tal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Colley. Very well said. Yes, we will revisit these topics over and over. I totally agree. Africa's problems, Gambia's problems are many, very complicated problems. There are external forces that are acting on us, but ultimately our leaders will have to take responsibility for our countries and find a way to develop the lot of our people. This path we have taken since independence is clearly not working. We have to find a way to turn around our economies and look more inwards. You have cited very relevant um, um, sources to make an argument, and I totally agree. And in addition to some of the sources you cited, is another is West Indian writer Walter Rodney, I think, who wrote How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. I have to admit I have not fully read that book, but I have I've read several reviews of the book, and it's very critical of colonial influence on African economies. And Rodney, who actually later on aspired to contest in elections in West Indies and took control of the direction of those countries, was finally assassinated. So all this goes, and you mentioned the case of Nkrumah and other assassinations and underminings that happened in Africa to influence the economic and political direction of those countries following independence at the height of the Cold War. In the cases of Nkrumah, the Zaire leader, what is his name again? Lumumba, in the case of the Guinea-Bissau leader. So there are many examples of that. Africa is being impacted from external pressures, but it's we are in the I believe now 22nd century, right? Or we're still in the 21st century. African leaders need to be able to be in charge. Like the British political writer once said, if a new government came to power, he can blame his predecessor government for many of the problems, but as time goes on and on, those blames, those arguments, blaming your previous government become less and less effective. At some point, people begin to blame yourself for what you have not done since you came to power. So African leaders, I believe, at some point, it's been almost 50 years now in many African countries since independence. I know that's still a very short time if you compare to countries like the United States, which have been independent more than 200 years. But, I mean, a lot could have been done within the past 50 years. So we will revisit this topic again. Dr. Conte, if you have something to say on this, briefly, the poverty rate in the Gambia is recently reported to be at 13%. Do you consider that a fairly accurate reflection of the condition in the Gambia, or you think something may be missing?
Well, I think something is maybe missing because I think it's more than that. And I don't have any authentic data to back my claim, but I wonder how they got it because when I saw the number, I said, I don't know. But so if we have found a problem, there's no problem if it's sort of. So I'm talking about the diaspora here because the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Sabali, talked about how we can empower the youth to go back and work on the farms. But then I say, well, you have abundance of people in diaspora who may be able to entertain such. And people in so when they go back on the farm to the farm, what are they going to grow? So Gambia, Jaboli, Menteng, Kanol, they are all imported. But
And Doctor, just to say this briefly, he just said that the Minister of Agriculture just claimed that Gambia would be rice self-sufficient in 2026. He just gave a date for it. I was wondering where he got that information from. What has changed? What makes him? What is? I don't know where he got that from. What makes him so confident that we can be rice self-sufficient in such a short period of time?
I wish she had taken a tour of the villages, even in the urban area, go all the way down to Kalaji. At the farm, what I started with the synthete. I just go far on from Musol Tarado Kwalaja. But again, since he said it, Mfaranya Dakatala, so there are certain things, in Indole Commodore for they entertain to say, Honorable Minister, come on, for better Baba. But Gambians are cash strapped. And the circle of poverty is there constantly. Everybody is praying they're going to be outside in other countries. So do we have the position to find a way pruka kakudol fanam. So that is my take and my concern, ko but in the diaspora we have the means. Can you believe if the minister is able to reach out to 50 diaspora Gambians, many along they have their gardens or they have their properties there, yeah, bay fence, but no activity there? And if the government can reach out to those people, because I don't believe that the government should be allocating land to businesses. If you want to start a business, you should buy the land. But in the Gambia, in our urban combo, they have the attitude of taking to do that. So the circle of poverty will continue. You even came by the phone Saturday, Nita the Union and karaoke. It means because in fact, last week it rained, I believe. Moja left Ethiopia to last Saturday. Very, very few people. And then Fananin Samana, then Samabanda, Nyamolu. They have this tendency come Nyamo Kajani. So because I had a problem last year, I told the guy, I can't Nyamo Jani, So I don't know, but the 13% rate, I'm not comfortable with that number. I think it's even probably 26%.
Thank you, Dr. Conte. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think there are a lot more questions to answer with regards to that figure. I do have a feeling that that report was based on research in the Gambia conducted by government data itself. Because I do understand from a recent conference by IMF, a joint IMF World Bank and Gambian officials conference, where it was said that the data that the IMF and the World Bank used to analyze the Gambia's economy was one that is collected from government data itself. So one can legitimately question the quality of the data that has been put together. Because looking at the other economic parameters in the Gambia, unemployment rate, inflation, the low economic growth, all that added together doesn't seem to indicate that the poverty rate would be almost at par with that in the U.S. So that's an open question out there. I hope more data comes out in the coming years, but I hope the general economy of the country improves to make the Gambia a better place for everybody. But that's that for this topic.
Baba has something.
I have a question. Did they say 30% or 13%?
13.
Oh no, that's Gambia cannot be. Gambia is way more. Gambia is more than 75% poverty rate. Now, listen, I wanted to say this, but I forgot. Do you know? Yes, I used to go to State House to report. I was a special attaché, and I knew those kind of people that were coming from the IMF or the International Diplomatic Corps. Mr. Jata, they used to bribe this. I'm not saying I've seen the bribery myself. No. But you can even Google this. Third world countries, governments, they bribe IMF officials. They give them tons of money, dollars, to report favorably.
Well, there was a scandal that came out concerning was it IMF officials or World Bank officials who came to do some I think some investigation in the Gambia, And what happened is Gambian officials, they put these guys in a hotel and plied them with alcohol and girls and stuff. So,
Gambia a country bunko mialonko unko
yeah,
banko mialonko mol
so
buka
that did not end up very well. So
banko mialonko Gambia poverty you don't even need IMF to report on it until we you can roughly come with raw data. Look, banko
yeah,
mialonko sama ga bungol mim boy ntola bungol fom kilo nyama jibe 90% of Gambians among housing good housing sir 90%
right.
of Gambians and womu kombole go to provinces yele ila nyanta bungol bije hankabi ning bad weather min kaka America jan trouble ya ning alay wo samba Gambia alaka balafad adin litur tumbonna wo
Right.
poverty is 13%. Ndol only 2 digits different with the United States. Really? There is poverty in America, but billahi wallahi, Gambia poverty is way far from 1-3%.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
1-3%.
yeah.
It's
You
not.
are absolutely right. I think in the US, we basically look at income level to determine poverty. But in Gambia, it's much more than income. I think the housing, access to food, access to clean water, all of those should be considered because in the US, you probably don't look at all that because we take those things for granted here. Almost everybody has access to those. So income seems to be the most important factor in determining who is poor and who is not poor. But in the Gambia, it's probably a little bit more complicated than just income.
You'll be
Income is
surprised.
a big.
They don't give them the report. Look at if they want to be truthful. I'm not cutting you off, Mr. Jada. They refuse to give them data. Third world governments, that's what they do. Gambia doesn't even have a vibrant statistics department. All these accidents that are happening, if you ask them how many accidents happen between 2020 to 2022 on Lamen area alone, they cannot tell you the data. Did they happen at night? Who were the drivers? What age range were they? Simple statistical data. They don't provide it. That country is not serious.
Totally agree. Thank you very much, Mr. Colley. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Conte. My final topic I want to weigh in a little bit is the recent twist in Sainabou Mbaye case. Last week, the matter was mentioned again in court, and it looks like the government prosecutors are still unable to bring in their key witness, the doctor in Ghana who conducted the autopsy on the body of baby Muhammad, who died in a car, basically of presumably of suffocation. Right? She was left locked in the vehicle for many hours. She died. He died as a result of that. So the government prosecutors could not bring in their key witness after several adjournments, and the presiding judge, Jaite, refused to grant any more adjournment. So the defense attorneys filed a motion for the court to declare a no case to answer. So it looks to me that this probably the matter is adjourned to sometime in November, I think November 15 or 17, something like that, around the middle of November. I think when the case returned to court on the next adjournment date, the matter will be dismissed. So this is going to be another big failure on the part of the government prosecutors again. They did not diligently prosecute this case. I don't know the reason behind it, but I don't think this tells very well. This follows on the heels of many other cases that the government has failed. Government prosecutors have failed. They did a very sorry, poor legal work in prosecuting these cases. Every Gambian citizen deserves adequate representation. This is a matter of justice for the baby who died in this case. The government should have done everything they can to prosecute this case and ensure that justice prevails for Gambian citizens, every Gambian, and for baby Muhammad, who by all rights is a Gambian citizen and deserves to be represented adequately for murder. one might say, or his accidental death. In the case of manslaughter, that is the legal claim. So I don't know exactly whether, in legal terms, a motion for no case to answer is the right course to take, or I don't know if the defense attorneys should rather go for a motion for summary judgment or a directed verdict. So I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, and anything I say here would not be considered as a legal advice. But I don't know. I tend to lean towards a directed verdict, in the sense that if the motion for directed verdict is accepted, the judge will issue a verdict which will be almost equivalent to a victory for the defense. And I don't know for sure, but that may also bar the state from bringing up this matter again in court with different charges or anything. A no case to answer may still leave the door open for Sainabou to be prosecuted again in this matter with different set of charges. I don't know if that is the case in the Gambia, but I tend to feel like a directed verdict probably would be the right course of action for the defense to move the court to declare rather than a no case to answer. But I don't know, it's going to be up to the judge, because I think failure to provide sufficient evidence to proceed with the case gives the judge, even without a motion by the defense, to enter into a judgment on his own, which in legal terms they call sua sponte. He may be able to, he might have legal powers to enter into judgment without the defense moving him to do that. But my understanding is that the defense has moved the court to declare a no case to answer. In my layman view of the law, I think probably, I don't know, I'm not familiar with Gambian law. Most of what I say in relation to my little understanding of US law. But I think maybe a motion for directed verdict, for the judge to declare a verdict for the defense, probably would be a better way to go. But it looks to me, by all indications, Sainabou is going to go home free next time he comes back to court, together with co-defendants, her brother and a family friend, all of them. So this is another debacle for the state. I don't know what's going on in our judiciary, and I don't know the qualification of these lawyers, but I hope they are well-trained, well-qualified lawyers. I hope they are not just fresh BTG graduates with very limited legal experience and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know what they have at the what they call. They used to have this. It used to be manned by Ghanaian lawyers. They call. I forgot the name, but I don't know. Do you guys have any take on this? Otherwise, we're going to end this session today. It's been a long weekend. So, Mr. Colley, Dr. Conte.
Well, for me, Mr. Colley, Mr. Yatta, this reminds me of the fact that Boubacar stayed 2 years, few months in remand. And women, please don't misinterpret me. And a life was lost. So they are willfully doing this to set Sainabou free. So no way.
I think many Gambians are feeling that way too. Yes. Mr. Colley, you have anything? Briefly.
Malavi kanyuro tol fondala kadi man kumaya Gambia ke tol fang foi dala but a crime in commit a crime in kumata and to avoid setting a bad precedent the law must take its rightful course. Unfortunately that's not going to happen under Barroso, right? Not in this government. But the reason why Malafika it will mention somebody might jump to conclude yajelen ninna dasia nyawanya anana jele nganyeng mol ito sa for Gambia anana jele people were calling yes since last year what more case ni mam finti back dole kan commandi na advisal ko ni ka fonye ko ñing case ñing follow ko mata bakale ngoy jumale ko ñe karlen ngoy ko dol mo de hungry link Gambia nga ngana time spend ñing kon no that's since last year. And on this year, be maintained. Calling, no, you have to cover this. What more, it didn't blow up like this. Yara fa would nun karanum freedom, doctor. Karanum freedom. Nindi no ne case nyin kono it will attack no freedom. So alhamdulillah nanama fi hani a dot nanama safi about it. But hanwo ila ko yambalafa. Yenyi mota ya sorong mile 2 for 2 years. Abije. Indala fa mim fola briefly Willem. It shows the extent to which Gambia's moral standard has taken a nosedive. In the Meramolo, Yaloning Sati Alpha leadership crisis Nabi Bangkok, poor leadership. Winston Churchill Mboka support them. But I'm for India, covering Indian only independence already. A Kamfara. Winston Churchill Kokan Kamfara. I am for Indian only. They will not have any quality leaders. They will have shithole leaders. I'm just paraphrasing. Janin Trump follow by for Kamol described with this nasty description. Winston Churchill following Fako India. I'll say like I'll tell leader Kenneso and India Iba fly Dankale. Ima leader Kenneso. Anu Hankabi Moleko. Imagine Modile Bijesa. Minkata Gujarat Kata Mol massacre. Right? But a sign the chicken have come home to roost. It will fana Angleterre leadership. You have to be an observer of history. You have to read.
And then an African Indian.
There you go.
So now they are claiming the British Prime Minister as Indian, when his parents came from Africa.
Rishi Sunak, right? Rishi Sunak. Awesome. So Gambian Golfana. Leadership crisis lebe Gambia manaka garauta back anu ni ko betonya fula e kadum badi ngol kasida gamen on ya badi ngoma nawe wodo palas al palas landi palas o manki e cash register ti wonton a job no manki job ti palas o kumi li ko je Singapore cheng nyame palas o nyanda ke ko they have the best model ning boyo malef gany boyo to fa min sorom malto kad mol ba la ko e kan attack nyame non freedom yana ala nata muneke e damole nata wali en ala best friend ndamo be kalamta. So kabrin case blow up that and dolen commanding kade fonye afanata media fanala mo inko so adole kan attack no dika sa kon teka barole attack ndeka da freedom mo nim pandere mbay ni mediam kan ja dole kan alka kol kan ngela moy jele wallahi ngela moy dole kan attack no para biaji be duwale police bo nyimbula para alhamdulillah fele duwal jabita sunko do nyum mala fi ngi tol fo ndol society Gambia be halak wala kono alza hakira da pari ngenen to nyata ndol bena nyi leader si nyul lebe kala sama alfalde nyul mon menan ko denani 66 ka fa banko minkan 38 million ka sunya dami
afola at least 70 and I think it's over
70 exactly 70 niko molye ko alinga finte silol kan just nganna niko ay tandidro masa will clamp down on you tiaga so fayika but niko wali balago set la kana place stadium mo fa tab ala fo nyaba Winston Churchill man to nyaf ngolte leader kende sot la Gambia ndala nga fale ni man attitude change. My conclusion is besides the fact that, let me reiterate this, Gambia be crisis like at the emergency room, billahi wallahi tallahi. Anu nimma wuli, mafonga wuli ngata operation no more for. Ninna intellectual anim dinkendol min kika balafa. Wallahi doctor ndele fo rata Gambia beti. But nda man kongo, na dimbal man kongo na family fendi min kongo. Okay? Niko wali balago sek le kana place te de moteka dim furungol fi seje 99% it exam pass anyam. Niko construct a sentence. Ita construct no. Look at what they write on Facebook or YouTube. These are the people, unfortunately, Ninga Mela commented all jam. I don't know for Monkana jam because you guys are sound and well informed. But let's go to Gambia. One from Gambia, go to their Facebook pages. The nonsense that they write. Wasifali, you think our future is going to be in the hands of those kinds of people?
Yeah.
This and Alta Ghana, I think Ghana didn't only see Ghana 17-year-old. Senior Kachaba, and that's one of my hobbies is doing that. Nigeria, no, Cameroon, and Zambia. Senior Kachaya, you compare that to Gambia. Nico Wali Balago Sekla can apply cater a foreign tap into left footer. Imagine Nico because Ndanga Kodo Georgia Naka didn't sponsor Gambia Mantra fight and dollar. Nkoiko Al ASL Safi. I want to look at those with leadership quality. Hankabi, I'm with those kids. Wallah, I'm still with them and I love them. The country responded, people responded. I out of my own pocket, I had to call the European Union ambassador. He graced the occasion. Wallahi. Yano hamoeka hamole dungi famola. Hamol dungi dindingola. But it has to come from the leadership. Do some musical what the Gambia inspire nola. Minka from Moleko, one musol doron. Sirifo Sonkonyol, one musol ko kaita it siso keta for musol people. Allah for never will be leak one sifa leadership produce la Gambia. Mr. Jada, Alangatonya Punyoe, Nico Wali Balago Sekle can apply, Ajibi Stedemoka Fanya Nimu didn't food in Sifala. Jaura Jamano Mantran intended. I remember I told you the Jaura Jamano Sanagos in Gambia school in Nakaka, somewhat Sankibaron, in Sanagos in the Gambia school than GCE.
Colin. Colin, let me remind you, Jawaraka is in Soda Island in Sanagos playground. No,
Memina. Ngo jawra ninka mankene jawra jamano la mbe performance la yalo last wasi min exam min kambe no nga
you remember when you used to sing President Jawar Maleka Funyani
banjul jamano ngo kalam tele dindi mal banjul jamano but ngame vote more competitiveness. Gambia High School Nusrat and is but mainly Gambia School in Senegal. Bila ibapuna sangoleng. Nis Gambia School in Senegal dan. In one of Senegal in Gambia School and GCE. Wasifa le wakaliba sifa of student party abe Gambia la san. Ye momo je ni wale balago se wale be fari ngol kono ani ni musicien mo be fanke jalon. Allahu akbar. Ndol le futa. Ning sa ñu le Gambia le future be ñu lebul unfortunately because ndol be faler sans ndol bita. Donc wallahi ndol you guarantee yourself you have the next 50 years? No, none of us here. Wallahi bakla an kami fala la moy ngata ngal la moy hakil wala ñin dinno ñin mo furo ñin denan falalu na fi jobe ñu lepp wana man fi ñi tol fo.
Yeah, Mr. Colley, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that input. I think we're gonna come to the end of today. We hope to meet here again next Sunday. Dr. Conte, if you have a final word, Dr. Conte, I'll let you say.
No, I'm fine.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Dr. Conte. Thank you, Mr. Colley. This is the end of our show today. We'll meet again next Sunday. We will get together and decide what to talk about next Sunday.
Baba, is it good for you? Huh? If you are off, is the time sort of thing. Is it good for you?
Yeah, in time better depending on if I am off. Fortunately, I am off. Yeah, but in time better. I tell better 1:30. No.
Okay.
But any time if any time is better for you, just communicate with Dr. Conte. We'll try to accommodate. No, that's perfectly fine. I'm cool with people expressing themselves, and I think you did a very good job. I don't see you coming across as Samara or something. I think you have a very strong point, and I do always have strong points myself. But the good thing is that we are able to communicate ourselves in a polite and more acceptable way. The same way I'm calling Tumanjai and all others to do. National Assembly members need to learn to be more articulate, to be more eloquent in the way they express their strong views, be very strong about it, but at the same time be able to be respectful and polite. I usually look at it as academic work. Dr. Conte is an academic. We know in academics we disagree with each other's point of view all the time. You can do a whole research and write a book about it. Some other academics will totally disagree with your point of view, but they're not going to go, raining invectives and insulting you and all that. They will argue their case report, contradict what you said, and make their point very clear and very strongly, but in a more respectful, way that engenders, that promotes debate and argument and all that. So that is very well established in the academic world. And the same way I view things, I view the National Assembly should be a place that is conducive for arguments, conducive for debate, that promotes healthy discourse, where everybody feels free to be able to express their strong views, in a way that, encourages others, including those, whether they agree with you or disagree with you, to also come up with their views. And that is the only way we can reach the truth. The National Assembly should be a place where we can reproduce, we can produce truth, we can produce justice, we can produce a way that will move our country forward. And we cannot do that if we shut each other down, if we insult each other, make each other angry, to the point that they feel like they don't belong here, they don't want to say anything. We need to encourage and promote that healthy atmosphere of debate and arguments, and that's my view about it. But again, we will revisit these points over and over. Gambia is a country in the making still, but we'll meet here again next Sunday. Thank you very much again. Thank you, guys.
Okay, bye-bye. You all take care. Mr. Barak.